All right, welcome back. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic that has drawn out for 2 years now has been referred to as the largest social experiment. Our lives were disrupted and routines turned upside down. Well, the family unit was hit by illness, shifts in schedules, and lockdown measures that put us in close quarters. Well, what impact did this have on family dynamics? And with parents, particularly fathers, having to spend more time with their children due to work from home measures, how did their roles change? And has the increased presence of fathers had any influence during this very unique period? Well, joining me for tonight's discussion on fathering in the pandemic are Mwongera Mutiga, husband, father, and founder of Papa Bear, a platform that seeks to encourage and equip men to be better fathers. We also have Marlon Lugadiru, who is a father of 4 and a positive fatherhood advocate, as well as Eric Washira, a father of 9-year-old triplets and 1-year-old twins. Yes, you heard that right. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Let me begin with you, Mwongera. In terms of very simply defining what a father is as we start this conversation.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you for having me on the show. Fatherhood is a calling. It's an opportunity. It's a relationship that men have with their children. It's fatherhood is the male figure that provides leadership and guidance and structure, and in many cases identity to a home. That's how I define fatherhood. It's what a man brings to a home setting in terms of leadership, in terms of structure, in terms of identity for the members of the family.
You know, Marlon, let me bring you in here because, around the whole idea of fatherhood, there's a lot of misconceptions, negative stereotypes, if you will. Just touch on a few of those and why that still is the case.
I think one of the biggest challenges we face as men is a lot of the things we do are in the background. It's not stuff that you may easily note, but it does carry a lot of weight. So you know that when a child is born, naturally the nurturing is taken up by the mother. Even if you look at it from a legal perspective, a child below a certain age, or if you had to separate the parents, then they are likely to go to their mother. So it seems natural that the mother plays a much more significant role. However, even psychological studies have shown that, the impact of a father in building a child is so huge that their absence in a child's life is so significant, the child tends to have a lot more struggles.
So what are some of those struggles, Marlon, that, kids would go through because of that gap if the father's not around?
There are issues with identity, image, self-image. There are issues with how the child relates to society. You have issues with how a child is able to, for example, make decisions. I just want to give you an example of a video I watched where, a gentleman asked about 30 kids who were coming in for a camp to a couple of questions. And the first question was, if you've come from a home where there is no present father, take 2 steps forward. There's a present father, take 2 steps forward. And by the time he was done, from about the 30 kids, there was about probably 10 who were at the front. And they had about 20 meters difference after a couple of questions. What that means is that these children who've grown up with a father have this advantage, this confidence. I've seen it in my workplace. People who have this relationship with their father tend to have some clarity that those that don't have would struggle in a lot of situations. So you have identity issues, you have confidence issues, you have decision-making issues that are easily relatable to the absence of a male figure in their lives.
Right. Eric, let me bring you in. You put a very interesting comment on LinkedIn the other day, kind of describing your experience during the pandemic. And you said, if you'll allow me, I have triplets who are 9 years, twins who are just a year old. Working from home combined with caregiving during this COVID period has been a journey of prayer, not to break down, staying power, and counting your blessings one by one, day by day. All in all, it's been a fun and challenging journey, and mental wellness is #1 support area. You know, I can only imagine being a parent of multiples, what that was like, being in the house and having to carry out your duties as dad. What was your experience like?
Thanks, Victoria, for having me on the show. Ideally, like the rest of the gentlemen have said, the father is there to support and provide leadership in the home. But when the multiples came, you know, we've been raised to believe or see this in the sense of what a father does. But we don't get to see, or we are not trained or shown what a father should be or how he should show up. And therefore, you run into this challenge, you run into these issues of really trying to be the father figure, try to stand in and help and support your wife, but even more so, be there for the kids. Now, multiples came for us at once, and there were 3 of them. And my wife had to stop work so that she's able to look after the pregnancy and support the kids. So we moved from a place of having 2 incomes and living well to having 1 income with 3 new babies and 2 new maids. And therefore, you now find the cash stream starts becoming an issue and a challenge. Now, this challenge now, of course, comes into the man. And of course, that's where the mental wellness part comes in, because as the father, how do you stay there? How do you not break down? How do you support and be present, but still make sure you're providing for the family? Number 2, there's the issue of direct support. How we are raised, men don't do diaper change. Men don't do some of these things. But in the culture that we've grown, in the age group that we have, it's kind of something we do, and it happens easily. So you find, as a man, you are being called into by your wife and by society, but there's also that, I am a man. There's also that inside thing from a cultural perspective of how do you show up, how do you behave, how do you be perceived by the society. And this push and pull then creates dynamics in you with respect to how you respond. And you can neither respond reactively, which now ends up show up in the wrong way. And what that does to you is negative perceptions, negative biases, and things start going wrong. Or you can show up positively, take up the role, do it well, and you enjoy it. The important thing is to have fun, to enjoy the journey, and not just focus on the destination. Enjoy the journey, enjoy the ride, because the most important thing that kids remember is who was there for them. Remember what Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. With kids, from day 1 when they were born, you have the 20 years of homestay with them until they turn 18.
Right.
Make that count, gentlemen, make that count.
No, indeed, being present, because you don't get that time back. You're extremely right, Eric. You know, and Wangera, let me bring you in on something that Eric had said, you know, that men are just not shown what a father looks like. And it kind of reminds me of, generally in the cultural aspect, you know, what lessons have men learned from their own fathers? You know, there's this image of a figure who's distant, who's absent oftentimes. But what lessons can you draw, for instance, from your father?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think part of the challenge with fatherhood today is a lot of men are living the lives that their fathers lived or their grandfathers lived 20, 30, 50 years ago. And some of those dynamics are no longer applicable in today's day and age. And that's part of the challenge with fatherhood, that we want to be treated in a certain way, or to for things to be aligned in our favor in a certain way because of how we saw our fathers do it, how we saw our grandfathers do it. And so that's part of the conversation. You know, we need to align our fatherhood and do fatherhood in the 21st century for the 21st century. Things are different now. The things that my father did, or the things that my father needed to do, are no longer necessary, or they're being done by other people. You know, things around security, things around protection, even issues around provision. Nowadays, you have multiple incomes in a home, which is different from what it was 50 years ago, 20 years ago, when the father was the main source of income. So I think, you know, we need to adjust ourselves as men in today's society to the realities that affect us today. I think it's also important to note that a lot of men struggle with identity. A lot of men struggle with self-awareness and not being able to know what exactly they are about as people, as individuals. And that translates into their leadership of their homes, right? And then you have a lot of issues coming out of homes. So, speaking to men who are already engaged and involved in their families, there is need for extra self-awareness and really just being aware of what it is that makes you tick, what it is that makes you move, so that you're able to translate that to your family and to provide the kind of leadership that your family needs. But I think, I learned from my own father that the one thing that's most important for a man is to be involved and to be present with the kids. My dad is still around. He's always been very involved in our lives. He's the kind of dad who would come for parent-teacher conferences, and all the teachers knew him. Because of that, all the teachers knew me. And I'm not so sure whether that kind of scrutiny was welcome for me at the time. But it was helpful, because then I knew that dad was involved. I think that's a lesson that I learned from him, that being involved, being engaged, just paying school fees and walking away is not enough. As men, we need to transfer our knowledge and our skills and our the things that we know to our children. We can't just leave it up to the school system to teach them. We also have lessons to teach as well. So just being hands-off and paying school fees and ensuring there's food on the plates and roofs over their heads is not enough. There's a lot more that a man needs to do to be involved with his kids, and that's what we propagate as the Papa Bear Initiative. We try and get men to be more involved, more engaged. Many of our fathers were distant and aloof with us. We can do things differently because we know that a man's presence in his children's lives makes a huge difference for their future. So I think it's important that men get more involved and more engaged and more present with their kids, especially in today's day and time and age.
Right. And we're running out of time, but as we wrap up, I just want to hear from Marlon and Eric in a minute or less, just how do we counter those negative perceptions or just change the narrative when it comes to fatherhood? I'll start with you, Eric, and then come to Marlon.
The call for me will be asking yourself, how do you be extraordinary in your role as a father? You look at the things you do, those are the ordinary things. You talk about diaper change, talk about feeding, talk about roof. Those are the ordinary things. Really sit down, have a personal reflection to ask yourself, how do you become extraordinary in this role as a father? Once you're able to define the extraordinary things or the things that you can do to make you extraordinary in that role, then you start living them. Start making these things happen. Start creating the environment for those things to show up, and then you will become extraordinary. Thank you.
Fantastic advice. Marlon, last word goes to you.
I think the first thing I would like to tell fathers is there's a lot of joy and satisfaction when you see your children turning out right. A few years ago, about 2 years ago, my kids did a surprise dinner for me. They made the dinner. They, prepared a restaurant style kind of thing. They did a menu. They surprised me with gifts that they had handmade. And all this is because of the effort we've put in being involved, engaged. And they could see the sacrifices. And in the end, they really appreciate. So, someone once said that everything is made twice. As a man, figure out what kind of family do you really want? How do you want your children to look like? How do you want them to grow up? And then begin to make decisions slowly that are driving your family in that direction. Get a mentor. And find somebody who you think has done a good job, and let them walk you through the places where you're going, because you've never been there before. You don't know what it's like to raise a teenager, because you've never been a father of a teenager until your daughter or your son becomes a teenager. Get somebody who's done it successfully. And then find things that you can do with them as a group, individually. I date my kids. We go out for lunch, we go out for breakfast. My daughter, when she turned 13, I took her out for our first official dinner because I wanted her to remember the first time I ever went out to a major restaurant or a big thing that was about food. I completely dressed up with a tie, just to make sure that she knew this was important for her. Take them out for dates, do fun stuff, the stuff that you do, washing the car or whatever it is, do it with them, make it fun, enjoy it together, and you'll notice the bonds are building, and then have open conversations. It's difficult for fathers to talk about boyfriends and stuff like that, but you need to, because if you don't, somebody else will. And they might not tell them what you would, and you may not like the outcomes of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Marlon, Wangera, and Eric, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for being such amazing examples of fathers in this modern society. Parenting is one of those things that you just learn on the job, whether you like it or not. But thank you so much for your input in trying to empower and equip fathers out there. Now, to some very good news. Citizen TV's Wajir correspondent Abdi Kafar Hussein has quit the back